America loves a story about an old colonial law. The law supposedly said that prisoners could not be fed lobster more than 3 times a week, not because lobster was expensive, because it was so cheap, so common, and so unwanted that serving it every day was considered cruel. In other versions of the story, indentured servants refused to work until their contracts guaranteed that they would receive lobster no more than twice a week. Sometimes there was a protest. Sometimes there was a prison riot. Sometimes the government stepped in to protect people from excessive seafood. It is one of the most repeated food stories in America. It has appeared in articles, travel stories, history books, and thousands of online comments. There is only one problem. Historians have never found the law. They have not found the famous servant contracts. They have not found records of the prison riot. The most famous part of America's lobster history may never have happened, but the strange thing is that the larger transformation was real. Lobster really did go from an abundant, low-status coastal food to one of the most expensive items on an American menu. The prison story may be folklore. The luxury price is not. So what actually transformed an ordinary coastal animal into market price? Before permanent European settlements appeared in New England, American lobsters were extremely abundant along the northeastern coast. They lived in shallow coastal water and could sometimes be collected close to shore. There were no refrigerated trucks, no enormous fishing fleet, no waiter asking whether you wanted your lobster covered in truffle butter. It was simply local food. Indigenous communities along the Atlantic coast had eaten lobster for generations. They cooked seafood using heated stones and seaweed. Lobsters could also be used as fishing bait or agricultural fertilizer. That did not mean indigenous people considered them disgusting. It meant lobster was one useful resource among many. Food did not need an expensive restaurant and a luxury branding campaign before it became worth eating. For European colonists, lobster developed a more complicated reputation. It was nutritious. It was accessible near the coast. And during difficult periods, it could help people survive. But that was also part of its problem. Lobster became associated with necessity rather than celebration. In 1651, Plymouth Governor William Bradford described a meal served to important visitors. The meal consisted largely of lobster and spring water. Bradford was not proudly presenting a luxury seafood dinner. He was explaining that there was very little else available. Imagine inviting important guests into your home and saying, "I am sorry, we only have fresh lobster." Today, that could be a $400 coastal wedding package. In the 17th century, it suggested that the colony was having a difficult year. Lobster's low status was not necessarily caused by its flavor. It was largely caused by abundance, geography, and storage. A living lobster can become excellent food. A dead lobster sitting without refrigeration can become a biological emergency. Colonial Americans had no modern cold storage network. They could not place thousands of live lobsters inside refrigerated trucks and send them across the continent. The animals had to be caught, transported, cooked, and eaten quickly. That made lobster widely available in some coastal areas, but difficult to obtain farther inland. And humans have a strange psychological rule. Anything that exists directly in front of us in enormous quantities usually stops looking valuable. If your beach is covered in something, you do not call it a delicacy. You call it a beach problem. This is why the prison legend sounds believable. Was lobster inexpensive in some coastal communities? Yes. Did coastal families eat it? Certainly. Could it also have appeared in meals served to servants or prisoners? Probably. But surviving records do not show prisoners living on endless piles of lobster. They do not show servants organizing a major crustacean rebellion. Colonial jails were generally small, badly funded, and miserable. Prisoners had more urgent problems than repetitive seafood. They needed heat. They needed ventilation. Sometimes, they needed basic food of any kind. Researchers have searched old Massachusetts records for the famous lobster law. They have looked for petitions, contracts, court cases, and official restrictions. They have found no convincing evidence. The story also changes, depending on who tells it. Sometimes the limit was twice a week. Sometimes it was 3 times. Sometimes it involved prisoners. Sometimes servants. Sometimes the restriction came from a court. Sometimes it appeared inside employment contracts. When a historical story keeps changing, but always preserves the perfect dramatic ending, you are probably not looking at legislation. You are looking at folklore. So if there was no great prison riot, what actually turned lobster into a luxury? It was not one dramatic restaurant meal. It was not one brilliant chef. And Americans did not suddenly develop more sophisticated taste buds overnight. The real transformation happened through technology. 3 major changes allowed lobster to escape the coast. The first was transportation. By the late 18th century, merchants were experimenting with ways to keep seafood alive during longer journeys. By the 19th century, specialized vessels known as lobster smacks were transporting live lobsters in seawater-filled compartments. This was confusing news for the lobster. It was now surviving the journey to the kitchen, but it was excellent news for customers. Fresh lobster could travel beyond the small fishing community where it had been caught. The second major change was canning. Commercial lobster canning expanded in Maine during the 1840s. Suddenly, lobster meat could travel hundreds of miles without immediately spoiling. For the first time, someone living far from the Atlantic could regularly eat lobster. It was not necessarily glamorous. Canned seafood does not usually enter a room surrounded by applause, but canning gave lobster something it had never possessed before: a national market. The third change was the railroad. Faster trains, improved ice production, better shipping containers, and live storage systems connected the fishing communities of New England with large American cities. By the late 19th century, enormous quantities of lobster were reaching Boston, New York, and other urban markets. The animal that had once been trapped near the coast was now appearing in hotels, restaurants, and wealthy dining rooms. And distance did something to lobster that flavor alone could never accomplish. On the coast, lobster was familiar. In some places, it was ordinary. Hundreds of miles inland, it was exotic. Nobody in Maine needed to be convinced that the Atlantic Ocean contained lobsters. But to an affluent diner in an inland city, a giant red sea creature transported alive across a large part of the country looked impressive. It also looked expensive, because getting it there actually was expensive. The lobster had not become tastier during the train journey. It had become more difficult to obtain. And difficulty is one of the most reliable ingredients in luxury. Restaurants completed the transformation. Fresh lobster stopped being presented as basic coastal food. It began arriving with butter, cream sauces, silver tools, and small bibs that made every adult at the table look prepared for minor surgery. The ritual changed the meaning of the meal. You were no longer simply eating an animal. You were participating in a ceremony. First, someone delivered the lobster. Then you tied a piece of fabric around your neck. Then you attacked the shell with specialized metal equipment. Then you paid significantly more than expected. This did not look like poverty. It looked like sophistication. By the late 19th century, lobster was becoming increasingly popular among wealthy diners in cities such as Boston and New York. Restaurants presented it as exotic, refined, and worth the effort. As demand increased, prices rose. And eventually, the effort itself became part of the attraction. Most foods are designed to make eating easier. Lobster requires you to perform manual labor before reaching your dinner. Somehow, this made it more expensive rather than less. Restaurants also developed more elaborate lobster dishes. The meat appeared with rich sauces, cream, butter, and expensive ingredients. Presentation became just as important as flavor. A cheap local animal had entered a dining room filled with white tablecloths and silver cutlery. Once it arrived there, it became difficult to imagine it anywhere else. By the early 20th century, lobster was no longer merely an abundant regional food, it had become a recognizable delicacy. It was associated with celebrations, tourism, expensive restaurants, and special occasions. Even the more casual lobster roll retained part of that prestige. It may have arrived inside a toasted bun, but it was still filled with meat from an animal that had become expensive to catch, transport, and sell. This is why the famous prison food became luxury food story is both misleading and strangely close to the truth. The riot was probably folklore. The law remains unsupported. The contracts have never been found. But the reversal at the center of the legend really happened. Lobster moved from an abundant coastal food with a relatively low social reputation to a national symbol of wealth. The animal did not change. Nearly everything surrounding it did. Transportation improved. Storage improved. Cooking methods changed. Restaurants transformed the presentation. Urban customers created new demand. And as fresh lobster became more difficult and costly to deliver, people began wanting it more. This is how luxury usually works. We like to imagine that expensive objects contain some permanent quality that cheap objects do not, but value is rarely permanent. It depends on where an object appears, who has access to it, how difficult it is to obtain, and what story someone tells while selling it. A lobster near a colonial beach was ordinary. A lobster arriving alive in an inland city was a marvel. A lobster on a silver plate was sophistication. A lobster with no price listed on the menu is a warning. The lobster never needed to become a better animal. America simply had to improve the transportation, change the lighting, melt some butter, and raise the bill. So the next time someone tells you that colonial prisoners once rioted because they were served too much lobster, remember the real story. The riot probably never happened. The law probably never existed. But the transformation was real. Americans took an abundant coastal creature, built an enormous industry around it, and turned it into something people photograph before they eat it. That may be less dramatic than a prison uprising, but it is much more American. Subscribe for more true stories about Americans turning ordinary things into extraordinary business.